Just want to say a few words on this big disaster in Afghanistan in Kunar province. There's been a huge earthquake. The latest death toll is estimated to be 1,400. That's coming from Taliban government sources. Um, this is a country that I think it's one of those places in the world that seems to get, it's almost cursed by bad news. Haiti would be another example. Haiti's been plagued by severe natural disasters as well as now extreme gang violence. In the case of Afghanistan, it's obviously the aftermath of a very costly war and also extreme poverty. This earthquake struck in Kunar province near, I understand that's near the Pakistan border. I've just been watching a BBC report, and at the hospital in Jalalabad, I think the figure was 10 hospital beds for 100 people. I may have misquoted that, but clearly there's a severe shortage there. The sad thing about these sort of things is, natural disasters often seem to hit people who already have, to put it crudely, a bad draw at life. It seems to affect the world's poorest people. And it does put things in context. Whatever problems we experience in developed countries, you look at somewhere like Afghanistan, and it's just it seems to be one tragedy after another. A few weeks ago, there was a big road accident, crash involving a lorry with migrants who'd returned from Iran, and 79 were killed in an inferno. So this sort of human tragedy always seems to hit the same places. Um, Afghanistan's a country that is prone to earthquakes. It lies in a seismically active area. Um, just thinking of the last few decades, the years 1998, 2002, 2015, 2022, and 2023 all saw major earthquakes. Now, the earthquakes in 2022 and 2023, and actually it would have been the 1998 quake as well, would have been under Taliban control. And this raises a real spotlight, or opens a real spotlight on how they manage this, because the Taliban are primarily known for being a very brutal Islamist ideological group. And they're better known outside Afghanistan for executing women who are alleged to have had adultery, or men whose beards aren't the right length. Extreme religious zealotry. But now they are in charge. People could talk all day about the rights and wrongs of what happened in 2021, and was it a decline of American authority, etc., etc., about the war on terror. I think it should be remembered that many of Afghanistan's problems can be dated back to an earlier period, not to 2001, but to 1979. It's something you'll never hear on Russian state media, but the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan really, really set that country back. I mean, that has been a sore wound ever since, I think. But it is one of the world's poorest countries, and it's just sad to see people trawling through rubble when there's effectively, it's rubble on rubble. I mean, it's what is there? That is someone's house. That is someone's life. It's tragic to see. But one thing I noticed in the report was that the Taliban are asking for aid, international support. They so far China, Switzerland, I believe India have offered support. I believe the UK government's offered £1 million of aid. Um, yes, that's important, but how will the Taliban utilize this? They need to show empirically they're using this uh, for what it's needed for. For pulling away the rubble, for emergency supplies, for tents, because desert areas could get very cold at night. A lot of Afghanistan's remote. Um, the pressing issue will be the medical aid in hospitals. Of course, a lot of people have been made homeless. That's going to be another factor. So there's all these compounded problems, and the Taliban, now that they're asking for support, I think they need to be flexible. If they're sincere that they care about the Afghan people, I mean, that sounds like a bad joke, but they say they're the legitimate government. So if they really believe that, let them prove it. Let them prove that they care about their own people. And one of the things in the report that I found striking was there's restrictions on filming women. I suspect this is some sort of dogmatic religious thing for the Taliban will probably say you can't see women in that situation, but it does make it harder, for instance, to report on how many casualties there are accurately because the male victims will be counted, but will female victims be counted? I mean, the toll stands at 1,400, but it could be a lot higher. Um, in the hospital, it showed there were some female doctors, um, which is probably slightly better than the previous Taliban governance when there wouldn't have even been women in that position. But the fact is, women are under huge restrictions in that country. So a female victim of a natural disaster is not going to get the same sort of aid that male victims are. Um, that's the reality. It meant that men had to pull out the rubble. Presumably, their daughters and wives are among the victims. But the Taliban looks down on that. Um, so it's I think this is not the time for the Taliban to be imposing strict religious dogma. If they really care about their people, they should be trying to help all victims equally and not get hung up on is this against Islamic scripture or this is a major disaster. They need to help the people that they claim to govern. So now is their time to prove it. Um, the other side of it, of course, is I think there has to be realism. Sanctions on Afghanistan because of the Taliban's human rights abuses can actually affect aid supplies in that sense. So perhaps there also has to be some flexibility on the part of donor countries, i.e., Western countries, to say, look, this is a humanitarian crisis. Let the aid in, let the Taliban prove that they're utilising it well. In neighbouring Pakistan, that country is also going through severe flooding. Hundreds have died there. It's not quite the situation of Afghanistan in terms of the government, but nevertheless, again, the flooding is impacting some of the poorest people in Pakistani society, like the flooding in Nigeria earlier this year. This is my point. Often natural disasters affect the poorest people in the world, and it's a tragedy, it really is. Um, Earthquakes have nothing to do with climate change, that's a geological thing, but we are seeing an increase in flooding. Not necessarily the death tolls. I mean, there was flooding and tropical storm disasters in the 1970s that cost hundreds of thousands of lives. So it's not necessarily that disasters are having bigger death tolls. It's just that they're becoming more frequent. And yes, I have studied this a little bit. One of the worst natural disasters in history was the Ebola cyclone of 1970. That killed upwards of 500,000 people, which would make it the deadliest tropical storm in human history. So it's not necessarily that disasters are deadlier than before, but they may be becoming more frequent. So that's definitely something to consider. But I hope that those who need the aid can get it insofar as they can. But there's going to be issues about hospitals needing generators. There's a shortage of staff. There's a shortage of hospital beds. Those are the things the Taliban have to be prioritizing. You know, these Taliban elders are that need to be considering what is the priority for this country. Afghanistan's recovering from years of war. It's incredibly poor. There's a severe infrastructure problem. Those have to be the Taliban's priorities. If they want to prove that they're fit to govern, if they want sanctions to drop, they have to prove this, which means dropping the religious dogma. Now, I'm not naive. The Taliban is not going to become a liberal democracy overnight. It's probably never going to happen. But they at least should look at what their priorities are. Their priorities are giving the people of Afghanistan what they need, which is infrastructure, which is supplies, just functioning hospitals. Those are the sort of pressing issues that the Taliban now have to prove that they care about. If they're asking for international aid, now is the time for them to step up and prove they're worthy to govern the country. They can't hide their appalling human rights record, but they can at least at this time prove that they care about the Afghan people enough to do something about it, and not just the male victims. They need to care, but show that they care about female victims as well. You know, when they took over in 2021, they insisted that they would respect women's rights. They haven't done that. They have rolled back on a lot of the things that they said. I mean, I don't think anyone seriously believed them. But this sort of situation, this huge natural disaster, is an opportunity for them to prove themselves worthy of governing a country.